Have you ever realized you're living someone else's life? Not literally, but emotionally. Making decisions based on what others will think. Choosing paths that generate approval rather than satisfaction. Constantly performing for an audience that may not even be paying attention. Here's the brutal truth no one wants to admit. The pursuit of external validation is the silent killer of your dreams, and you're probably addicted to it without even realizing it. The self-help industry will sell you the lie that you need to be more confident, more charismatic, more this or that to impress others. But this is exactly the opposite of real freedom. The most powerful people you know have something in common that has nothing to do with charisma. They stopped begging for approval and learned to validate themselves internally. In the next few minutes, you'll discover how to kill the version of yourself that exists solely to please others, and build an inner fortress so solid that criticism becomes irrelevant and praise becomes unnecessary. Because there's a world of difference between being oblivious to other people's opinions and being strategically selective about which voices deserve your attention. When you master this, you don't just become more confident, you become unshakable. There's a ghost version of you walking around doing things you'd never choose to do, saying yes when you mean no, and smiling when you should be being authentic. And this version is literally killing who you truly are. It's like having a stunt double acting out your life while you watch from the audience, frustrated but unable to take back control. Have you ever noticed how some people seem to be constantly performing for an invisible audience, adjusting every word and gesture based on approval that may or may not come? They've created an approval self so convincing that sometimes even they themselves don't know where the performance ends and the real you begins. Susan David, in Emotional Agility, calls this living under the thumb of others, where your decisions are outsourced to whoever is paying attention. The approval self is a sophisticated parasite that feeds on your vital energy and returns crumbs of temporary validation. It's the worst thing you can do in life. Think about how many times you've shaped an opinion based on what you imagined the other person wanted to hear, or how many times you've chosen clothes, careers, or even relationships, thinking first of all about external approval, and then, if there's time left, about your own happiness. It's frightening when you stop to calculate how many hours of your day are spent on performative behaviors rather than genuine choices. The cruelest part is that the people you're trying to impress probably don't even notice your efforts because they're too busy trying to impress others too. It's a theater of the absurd where everyone is acting and no one is truly watching. Identifying this phantom self begins when you can distinguish between your internal motivations and your performative motivations. It's like learning the difference between real hunger and emotional gluttony. When you're about to make a decision, there's a simple but brutal question that exposes everything. Would I do this if no one would know? If the answer is no, you've just caught your approval self red-handed. It's uncomfortable at first because you realize how many of your choices are actually non-choices, automatic reactions programmed to generate likes in real life. But here's what few people tell you about this identification process. Once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it. And when that happens, you can finally start doing something most people never do.
The autonomous internal validation technique is like having an internal judge who knows all your values, dreams, and limitations, and who never accepts bribes of external approval. It's the difference between being governed by yourself or by a committee of strangers. Most people live with a third-party validation system, where self-esteem fluctuates like stocks based on the random reactions of others who may be having a bad day, experiencing personal problems, or simply not understanding the context of your life. Have you ever noticed how one person can make a casual comment that ruins your mood for hours, while another can compliment you and you barely absorb it? This happens because your internal system is dysregulated, prioritizing external inputs over your own conscious assessment. Daniel Kahneman showed that our brains give disproportionate weight to recent and emotionally charged information, even when it comes from unreliable sources. Building this internal system begins with something that sounds simple but is revolutionary in practice. You need to become your own best evaluator, knowing your criteria better than anyone else could ever know. It's like developing an emotional GPS that works even when there's no sign of someone else's approval tower. You consciously define your non-negotiable values, your genuine goals, not the ones you think you should have, and create personal metrics of success that make sense within your life context. For example, if you value authenticity over popularity, your internal system needs to give more weight to moments when you were true to yourself than to moments when you were accepted by the group. It's a conscious reprogramming that requires mental discipline, but it frees you from toxic emotional dependence. The true power of autonomous internal validation emerges when you realize you can give yourself the recognition you've always hoped for from others, and discover that this self-approval is infinitely more satisfying and lasting. When you master this, something fascinating happens. You stop begging for attention and start attracting genuine respect, because people sense the difference between someone who needs validation and someone who has already validated themselves. It's like the difference between someone desperate for a job and someone considering an opportunity. The energy is completely different. You develop a quiet confidence that doesn't need to be advertised because it simply emanates. But having this solid internal system is only the first step, because now you need to learn something even more sophisticated. The selective indifference method is like having an emotional noise filter that blocks out 99% of irrelevant opinions while amplifying only those that genuinely add value to your journey. It's behavioral engineering applied to your sanity. Most people treat all opinions as if they carry the same weight, as if criticism from a gossipy neighbor has the same relevance as feedback from someone who truly understands the subject and cares about your growth. Have you ever stopped to think that you're listening to people who don't even live the life you want to live? It's like asking investment advice from someone who's broke, or relationship tips from someone who's been alone for decades. Marcus Aurelius, almost 2,000 years ago, already knew this when he wrote that you have power over your mind, not external events. Realize this, and you will find strength. The method works through a conscious screening system where you categorize sources of opinion based on objective criteria, not emotional proximity or voice volume. Mentally create 3 boxes: relevant opinion, people who have expertise in the subject and wish you well; neutral opinion, well-intentioned people without specific knowledge; and noise, everything else. The person who criticizes your venture but has never done it goes straight to the noise box, regardless of whether they're your favorite ant. The mentor who has been down the path you're on goes to the relevant box, even if they sometimes say things you don't want to hear. It's brutal at first because you discover that many people close to you are in the wrong box, but it's liberating when you realize you can simply ignore 90% of the criticism without guilt, because it's statistically irrelevant to your goals. Mastering selective indifference happens when you develop something few possess: the ability to listen to destructive criticism and literally feel nothing, as if someone were commenting on the weather on another planet. It's not insensitivity or arrogance, it's intelligent discrimination. You become a sommelier of opinions, able to instantly distinguish between nourishing feedback and emotional garbage disguised as advice. When someone criticizes you for choices that align with your values and goals, you feel the same way you would if they criticized your eye color, a genuine, healthy indifference. This frees up an absurd amount of mental energy you were wasting processing your relevant input. But mastering this selectivity is only part of the equation, because there's something even more powerful.
The active detachment strategy is the most elegant paradox in human psychology. The less you care about reactions, the more powerful you become in pursuing your goals. It's like having laser focus without the anxiety that typically accompanies grand ambitions. Most people confuse detachment with not caring about anything, when in fact it's the opposite. It's caring so much about what truly matters that you become immune to the emotional distractions that lead others astray. Have you ever noticed how elite athletes become completely zen before an important competition? They're not disconnected, they're hyper-connected to the goal and completely disconnected from the noise of the crowd, the commentary, and the external pressure. Stoicism scholar Ryan Holiday calls this process-focused, outcome-detached. You control your preparation and execution, but release control over how others will react. The strategy works through a conscious redistribution of your emotional energy. You withdraw investment in variables you don't control and double down on those you do. It's like being the CEO of your own life. You define the strategy, execute with excellence, but don't lose sleep over market fluctuations. When you're building something important, be it a business, a relationship, or a skill, there's a constant temptation to check for reactions. Are they liking it? Am I on the right track? Will they support me? This energy wasted on monitoring approval is energy not being invested in execution. Active detachment teaches you to become obsessed with the quality of your execution and completely uninterested in immediate reactions, because you know that quality results speak for themselves. The transformative power of this strategy reveals itself when you realize that your greatest achievements came precisely from the moments when you were so focused on the process that you forgot to worry about what others would think of the outcome. It's like entering a permanent state of flow, where your only metric of success is, am I doing my best based on what I know today? When the answer is yes, you sleep soundly, regardless of external reactions, knowing you did your part. This creates something few experience: the freedom to pursue ambitious goals without the paralyzing anxiety of needing approval. You become dangerously effective because you're not wasting energy managing other people's egos or external expectations. But this mastery of active detachment prepares you for something even deeper. The rule of powerful solitude is when you discover that the best company you can have is your own. And this isn't consolation for the absence of others, it's a conscious preference born of self-discovery. Most people dread being alone with their own thoughts because they've never learned the difference between nourishing solitude and toxic isolation, between choosing to be alone and being rejected by others. Have you ever noticed how some people fill every free moment with noise? Music, TV, idle conversations, anything to avoid confronting the silence of their own mind? They've turned solitude into an enemy when it should be their wisest counselor. Henry David Thoreau spent 2 years alone in Walden precisely to prove that a man cannot be solitary if he is in good company with himself. And from that experience came insights that still transform lives 150 years later. The process of transforming the need for approval into a joy and independence begins when you stop seeing alone time as a void to be filled and start seeing it as territory to be explored. It's like discovering an entire continent within yourself. When you no longer need constant external validation, something magical happens. You develop the ability to entertain, advise, motivate, and console yourself. It's not about becoming antisocial or superior to others. It's about becoming whole enough that relationships are choices, not desperate needs. You stop collecting people to fill internal voids and start connecting with those who genuinely add to your journey. It's the difference between needing friends and wanting friends, a subtle shift that completely transforms the quality of your relationships. The mastery of powerful solitude manifests when you realize that your best ideas, decisions, and moments of clarity occur when you're alone with yourself, away from the influence and expectations of others. It's in these moments of silence that you hear your authentic voice, the one often drowned out by the noise of external opinions. You develop something rare: the ability to be your own best friend, advisor, and motivator. When this happens, you stop begging for attention and begin to emanate a magnetic energy that attracts quality people because they sense you are complete, not needy. It's the ultimate paradox. When you stop needing approval from others, you naturally begin to receive more genuine respect and admiration. You become unshakable, not because you've developed emotional armor, but because you've built an internal fortress so solid that external storms become irrelevant.
Now you have the complete roadmap to freeing yourself from the invisible prison of external approval. But here's the question that will determine whether your life changes or if this becomes just another video you watched. Do you have the courage to disappoint some people, to finally please the most important person in your life? Because let's be honest, when you stop seeking validation and start living by your own standards, some people will get uncomfortable. They'll try to pull you back into the game of mutual approval because your independence exposes their dependence. Think about your next important decision, the one you've been putting off because you're calculating others' reactions. Now imagine what it would be like to make that decision using only your own values as a guide, completely ignoring the opinion committee that lives in your head. What opportunities would you pursue? What toxic relationships would you finally end? What authentic version of yourself would finally emerge? The question isn't whether you can live without external approval. You already have everything you need within you. The question is, when will you stop pretending you need permission to be who you truly are? Transforming the need for approval into emotional independence isn't a one-time event. It's a daily process of conscious choices. If this content resonated with something real within you, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications.